I read that grief is just love with no place to go, but I figured if you sew, there's always a place for that love to go. And that's why I'm making my first quilt. And as this quilt is going to be a gift, I'll be honoring my grandmother's legacy. And my grandmother didn't quilt, but the socks she knit us will keep our feet and our memories warm for many years to come. And hopefully, my quilt will do the same. It's day 3 of quilting. It's Saturday. I feel like I look so sleepy and my hair is all like fluffy, but I'm looking forward to getting a little bit more done. The first 2 blocks that I made, they took a lot of time. When I was first starting, I was thinking I'm not going to prepare all the strips of fabric and all the squares, but I do think that's going to be nice so that I have like all the stuff and I can keep sewing. I do think I still need to focus on each block because I don't have sort of the experience of, you know, keeping everything organized. I think if you want to do that, a lot of it is about an organized space, and currently it could be a lot more organized. So to get nice blocks, because that's the point, they really don't have to be perfect, but I do want to be happy with the end result and take my time learning this new skill, because I really enjoy learning new skills. It's also funny because I've been sewing for 20 years and I can't quite articulate like the differences, but yeah, it feels different and it feels awkward. And I think it's a really fun part of learning something new that I get to experience a lot these days. Let's see how much I can get done today. I love working with this print. This print helped me decide on the colors to choose, but I didn't have that much of it. So I had to be really careful how I cut it. And I wanted to make sure that the little character on the print was in the center of some of the blocks at least. So that meant that every step I would do a check to see what the best plan was. Here I decided the narrower strip would be best to cut first and then a wider strip so that the figure would be positioned in the center. And then after cutting the strips, I would try to get as many of the little girl illustrations out of the strip as possible. And that meant double and triple checking where the cut lines would go. And I did that by putting the ruler down and actually pointing at the lines where I would cut so that I could better visualize it. And I needed that because with these big life events like losing someone you love, it's not just the loss that you grieve, but there's so much going on in a short period that it takes weeks or months to process everything that happened. So I was still easily distracted and I really didn't want to mess this fabric up. Once I had a little stack with the girl nicely within the margins of the seam allowance, I started to become less picky. Even without the little girl, there were so many cute elements that would make a lovely addition to any block. It's day 4 and I managed to get quite a bit of sewing done yesterday. I'm noticing I'm getting more confident sewing and cutting everything, and I also, this is the last block that I made. It matches up better than the other ones. I also figured out how to better cut the flying geese so that the there's a better chance of the points staying intact. So it's exciting to notice that I'm progressing, that I'm getting better. It might just still be luck, but it feels like I have more control over the sewing and cutting. For today, I'm just going to keep sewing and trying to keep it enjoyable. I don't want to push it to a point where it's just not fun anymore, because I still have to do quite a few blocks. I'm still debating if I want to combine it maybe with, I don't know, a 16 patch block or a variation on the sawtooth star. But I guess the only way to find out is to keep going and see what the quilt is going to look like when I have more of these, the sawtooth stars, and then decide if I want to try and put maybe some solid blocks in between, which could also be really nice. For now, I think it's best to focus on making more blocks and then figure that out once I get there. Luckily, there were still many more blocks to sew. And the more blocks I made, the more I got into a rhythm and into a flow. There were still moments where the loss of my grandmother hit me and I was overcome with sadness and grief. But there was more space in between those moments, so I was able to come up for air. All these emotions were still there, but I was able to navigate them a little bit better. And having the quilt to work on every day was really helpful. As a whole, it's quite a big project, but I was also able to break it up in all these small steps so that I could work on it each day. And even in the moments where I didn't feel the best, doing maybe 10 minutes of work on the quilt, I always felt lighter afterwards. Of course, I also had many moments where I had trouble getting started. And in those moments, I like to ask myself a simple question. What's the easiest task that I can do to move the project forward? And sometimes that means I only set up my sewing machine for the next day, but I'll take it. A win is a win. It's day, I have no idea what day it is. As in, I know it's Wednesday. I'm trying to do just little pockets of time here and there to work on the quilt, but today I have a little bit more time. I'm currently at 14 blocks, so that's not halfway there. I have also started doing the chain piecing, which is a lot of fun. It's just cool to see everything strung together. I'm curious to see if I am going to have enough fabric for what I'm planning. I am saving all the scraps, so ideally I'm going to use up the scraps from the project in the quilts and use as much as possible. I'm going to put on some headphones, put on a nice podcast and get to it. really does look like a perfect day for quilting today with the rain. I don't know, it's just so cozy. I think it's going to rain all day. It's raining so much, even the magpie is hiding. I don't know if you can see him, but it does mean it's perfect weather for quilting. After filming, I'm going to open the door to enjoy those sounds. The plan for today is to finish all the quilt blocks. I think that's realistic. I don't know. I have this stack of blocks prepared. It's a bit of a mismatched combination for some of them, but I think it's going to look fun in between all the other blocks. Yeah, I'm not quite sure if I have enough fabric for the top for all the blocks. I wanted to make 36. It sort of looks like it should be okay, but I won't really know until I start sewing them. I want to finish the ones that I have pinned and ready to go. I want to have those out of the way before I tackle the scraps of fabrics that I see laying on the table. But I think it's going to be a fun and productive day of sewing. So everything you see laying here are sort of a couple of scraps and sort of blocks or squares that I've already cut. And there's roughly placed with the colors I want to use them with. And then there's some scraps left that I want to use for the back of the quilt. And this is what's probably going to be left over. It's Sunday morning and it's a little bit over a week and a day since I started the quilt. I have finished all the sort of easy blocks, the ones that I had enough fabric for, and I just laid out, well, 2 days ago I laid out the quilt and I want to show you where I'm at. Ideally, I would make it 6 by 6, but I don't have enough fabric for that. So my thought is to add at least a row at the bottom and see what I can get from all the scraps that I have. Here's everything, or at least the biggest pieces that I think are usable. Those are blocks in progress. This one is enough for one block, and this little pile, I think including the scraps, is also enough for another block. I also have the two here. These belong to the ones on the sewing table, so you can see this one is made from scraps, has a little seam here. And if we look at the quilt, so the pattern that I'm going for is I have the darker ones at the corner at the moment, and if I add another row I would need 3 lighter blocks and 2 darker blocks. So I have enough for that, but if I wanted to add another row and go for the 6 by 6, I don't think that's really possible. I might do a test block with this fabric right here. It's a little bit of a darker value and I might combine it with this one for the stars. I'm not sure if that would mean that I would have enough. That's the puzzle I'm facing today. I'm trying to figure out if I can get another sort of light colored block and then also use some of the squares to make a darker colored block with this as a base color. But I think it's possible, so I'm going to try it. It's I'm not really planning that far ahead. I'm like, okay, can I do one more block and then can I do another? Worst that can happen is I have a couple of blocks that I'm not going to use for the front and then I'm going to use them on the back or something, but more blocks, so. Using the previously cut squares as a template made the whole process pretty straightforward. One thing you do have to look out for is previously made cuts with the rotary cutter. So in the corners and on the edges, because the cuts are so clean that you can hardly see them unless you pull apart the fabric. And as the scraps got smaller, the stack of blocks grew. And block by block, I started feeling better. I wasn't just piecing a quilt, I was also piecing myself back together again, albeit a little scrappier than before.